I bought a drone to capture some images here in Jalisco, but due to cartel activity, I couldn't fly it. So I just kept it in its box for a few months until I got a chance to go on vacation to my hometown in Veracruz when I went to visit my great-grandparents in a small village. I was there visiting my great-grandparents and cousins, who happened to be teenagers and were amazed by the drone I brought. So we went on to fly it and show them how we could see from the iPad in real time where it was flying and what it was seeing from above. We got back to the house, and my grandpa was there and told me that he had seen those before back in his days. I asked him when that was, and he said it was back around the 1940s. I thought he was just joking, but he is a pretty dead, serious old man who served in the Mexican Revolution with Pancho Villa, La Famosa Bola. That's what they were called back then, the Bola. I asked him how he knew it was a drone. He said he and his brothers used to herd cows back then, and at that time, it was legal to carry guns, shotguns, and everything needed to protect your cattle from thieves or wolves. So he was out with his brothers, taking care of the herd, and saw something weird that was above them, and it hummed really hard. They thought it was some kind of weird bird, so they started shooting at it, he and his brothers. When the drone saw it was being shot at, it started shooting back. Obviously, they didn't know it was a drone. They thought it was a weird bird. Everybody ran, and since they had horses, it took some time for the drone to catch any of them. My great-grandpa said he hid behind a tree and aimed at the drone and somehow hit it. The drone fell, and he and his brothers went to look at the bird. Upon looking at it closer, they saw it wasn't a bird. They hit it with their shotguns, and it felt like metal. So they didn't know what it actually was. My great-grandpa said it looked the same as my drone. Since they were in the Sierra, they saw up in the mountain some people dressed in weird suits coming down. My great-grandpa and his brothers were really scared, so they loaded their guns and hid. When these people arrived, they picked up the drone, and somebody speaking Spanish asked them to come out. My great-grandpa says they told them that if they ever saw one of these things again, to not shoot them. They opened up a briefcase and gave each of them a really good amount of money to buy land, and some even bought horses and more cattle. These strange people, dressed in weird suits, just told them not to talk about the incident with anybody. My great-grandpa said that's how he built the house with that money.
I lived in an old building from the 60s up until 5 years ago. The building was old, and my apartment had been abandoned for 10 years until we moved in. It had lots of stories about ghost girls playing ball and weird voices being heard and stuff. This happened about 8 years ago. I had moved to a bigger bedroom because my brother moved to another city for college, and I took his room, across the hall where my old bedroom was. Months later, some new neighbors moved to the apartment above mine. They were a family of 4, Mom, Dad, 2 teen boys. They were a very violent family. Almost every single day, they screamed at each other, and there was a big deal of physical violence involved. Hitting, throwing objects, pushing, and so on. It was dreadful. The police came in several times, but as usual, nothing changed. Everyone in the building was scared they might turn up dead one morning. That's how bad it was. Anyway, they had been living in the apartment above mine for around 2, maybe 3 months, when one night I went to bed late. I was tired, and I closed my door so my cat couldn't come in at night and wake me up. I really don't know what time it was. All I know is everything was silent and dark. In those days, I was undergoing constant episodes of sleep paralysis, so I developed my own system to stop the horrible episodes before they began. I still use that method, and fortunately, after years of meditation, I haven't had an episode in at least a year. Well, that night, I began hearing the horrible ringing noise that alerted me of my sleep paralysis, so I forced myself to wake up. It was very difficult, but I finally succeeded. It was around 2:30 a.m. I constantly woke up around that time, long before I even knew that in Japan the witching hour is between 2 and 3 a.m. To avoid falling asleep again, I turned on the lights and got up so I could walk a bit in my bedroom. I grabbed a book, read for a while, and felt sleepy again around 4. I decided to give it a try. If I felt another episode coming, I'd just wake up. I went back to bed and fell asleep. A while later, I don't know how long, I woke up feeling hair in my face. It was a very uncomfortable feeling, and I assumed it was my own hair. But when I tried to grab it to move it aside, I realized it was not my hair. I must say I was not fully awake, but wasn't asleep either. I could move, but the ringing was beginning to sound in my ears. As I said, I realized it was not my hair, because it was very messy and I wore mine in a braid, so there was no chance it was mine. I opened my eyes. There was nothing. I was too scared to even try to turn on the lights, and I instinctively began praying. I looked again, and, to my dismay, in the corner I, very briefly, saw a woman crouching in the ceiling. Yes, she was upside down, looking at me. Her hair was long, and messy and dark, and she wore a white gown. No, don't think about Japanese movies. She looked like a Mexican native, with a very dirty and worn cotton gown, and she was holding a baby. It looked like a baby. It was seriously scary, because I was sure it was not human. It had never been human. I don't know how I knew. I just knew. I closed my eyes, but I could feel her staring at me. I had never encountered something so awful, so dark. I simply did what I knew best. Cast a circle. I'm a pagan, in case you wonder. I called the elementals. I called the gods. I begged them to help me keep that thing away. The damn thing didn't leave. I prayed harder, visualizing the bubble of golden energy around me grow bigger. I was absolutely terrified. And then, when I was beginning to think that horrible thing was going to be my new roommate, I felt Kitty Paws walking in my bed. The cat lied down next to me, and I felt its warm weight cuddle. I could almost feel the woman growl angry, and she vanished, just like that. I thought, well, my cat has saved me. But then I remembered I closed the door, and there was no way my cat was with me. I closed my eyes tight, still terrified. But the truth is, that warm, cuddly presence was actually comforting. I finally fell asleep after a while. Next morning, my door was closed, and there was no cat inside the room. I asked my parents if they had opened my door after I went to bed, and both of them said they hadn't. Curious thing is that from that day on, I constantly saw a cat-shaped shadow in the living room. I can, sometimes, see how spirits look like. That's how I know how the woman looked like. I know it was a black and very big cat. It liked to sit on the top of the back of the grandfather chair we had. It played with my cat. And I think my cat actually liked him very much. The weird, horrible woman never appeared again, but I think she was called by the violence and hatred my neighbors generated. I'm not sure if it was a demon, a poltergeist, or just negative energy that I interpreted as a woman. All I know is that all the activity in the house, voices, doors opening and closing, shadow people, stopped, except for the cat. I used to thank him for his help almost every day, and left him cat food and toys sometimes. I never got a name from him, and never tried to give him one. Even my mom, the skeptic, who I think is just a witch in denial, admitted seeing the cat once in a while. One day, the black kitty just left. I think his job was done. I am convinced that cat was some sort of guardian that the gods sent us to keep us protected from that inhuman horror. I have my own ideas on why it came to me as a cat, and I am sure that, if I need him again, all I need to do is call. So, this is my story. I know how crazy it sounds. It's up to you to believe it or not. But all I can say is, it was real too. I still feel nervous when I remember that evil thing, because I genuinely felt in danger, and I pray to all the gods I never encounter something like that again. 5 years ago, we sold the apartment we lived in. We moved to my aunt's house while we finished building our new home. My aunt's house belonged to my grandmother, and it was built around the 50s, in an area that used to be completely deserted before. The area was very different to where I used to live. I really didn't like it much, but my aunt was very kind by letting us stay with her in the meantime. The house had reports of activity, but it was the usual stuff. We're a weird family. My aunt used to be very good in reading Spanish card. My mom had premonitory dreams. A cousin of mine is sort of a medium, and in general, all my aunts and female cousins see shadows on a regular basis. Nothing nasty or dangerous. So, at that time, things were going badly for everyone. I was undergoing a lot of job-related stress that caused me migraines. My parents were having constant money arguments, and my aunt was going through some sad personal stuff. So, evidently, the atmosphere was absolutely dreadful. We all tried our best to avoid trouble, but it was a bit hard. One of those nights, I was asleep, and suddenly, I began hearing the horrible ringing noise that alerts me of sleep paralysis. I knew I just about to have an episode, and I tried to wake up. It was hard, and when I woke up I moved to lie on my left side, but the ringing came back. I tried to wake up again, but I only managed to move a bit. Suddenly, I felt someone sit next to me, and I thought that the only person that would sit next to me is my mom. But why the hell would she do that in the middle of the night? It made no sense. I moved again, slightly, and woke up a bit more, but the ringing didn't go away. I then felt this person lie down next to me. It felt female, hugged me, and began caressing my hair very softly, and I was like, what the hell? I couldn't move anymore, and the ringing in my ears was louder. I got angry. Whoever it was, it had no right to invade my personal space like that. And I formulated in my mind, very clearly, go away, don't touch me. It was when things became weirder. She held me tighter, and her touch became possessive. I got the impression she whispered something like, my girl. I concentrated again, thinking, go away. You are not my mom and you have no right to touch me. I am not your daughter. The thing got angry, and didn't seem to want to leave. I felt her nails in my arms, and I began to freak out. I got the sensation that if didn't defend myself, I was going to be stuck with her forever. So I began repeating in my mind, something I really can't remember. But I'm sure it was some sort of prayer. I felt this thing release me, angry. I kept repeating the same words over and over again, and the thing finally left. I have no idea what it was. My grandma had died a few years ago, and her wake was held in this house, but it didn't feel like her. No one died there, and the thing was not part of the inhabitants of the house. It just came in and left after I made it clear I was not her daughter.
My dad used to serve in the army and retired early. He loved to engage back in the day against guerrillas like EZLN and the Sinaloa cartel. He retired early and was looking for something to do. So he applied as a security guard for a mining corporation. As the executives saw his resume, they saw he would be a perfect match to be head of security in a mine in Sinaloa. He was given special instructions to not let the cartels steal any of the minerals they were mining. And if needed, he could use lethal force, as he would be in charge of another 6 people, 24/7. My dad loved the adventure, and he had the know-how to survive in the Sierra or the jungle and manage different sets of weapons. So he arrived at the mine in Sinaloa, where there were all-day TNT explosions going on, and people would just carry out all the gravel and residue out of the mine all day. At night, it was mostly about ensuring nobody would mess with the machinery or try to lurk inside the mine, so it was pretty quiet. After a few days, he saw everything was quiet and calm, so he went to the local cantina. That's where he met the cartel boss of that area. The cartel boss was a nice guy, and after having a few beers, he asked my dad what exactly they was digging out of the mine. My dad told him he didn't know, and said the mining corp might not have found the mineral they were looking for, as they were just mining and pulling out gravel. The cartel boss laughed and told my dad that the mining corp had been doing that for over a year. He then said they weren't really interested in any mineral from the mine, as their main business was harvesting certain plants, not minerals. From then on, they became friends and would meet each other from time to time in the cantina. Until one day, a TNT explosion collapsed half of the mountain, which left a big entrance visible. People were sent home, and the guards were kept to monitor at night. During the night, the guards saw some weird beings that looked like iguanas with tails, but were walking on 2 feet. Their eyes were shiny at night, and there were easily about 10 of them. All the guards pulled out their weapons. My dad told one of the guards to get the cartel boss with men to help with those weird beings in case things got nasty. Once the cartel boss arrived with his men, they were all armed and saw those iguana-looking creatures walking around. The cartel boss asked my dad if he had informed the mining corp about this, to which my dad replied no. The cartel boss told my dad not to report this to the mining corps, as this might be what they were actually looking for. He said he didn't want any military or police from the federal government in his zone, and instructed my dad to report that the cartel had taken over the mine. My dad told the executives that the cartel had arrived and taken over the mine, and all workers left scared. The executives told my dad not to worry, to come to the headquarters, sign his resignation, and he would be rightfully paid for his end of contract. My dad says that area is still well protected by the Sinaloa cartel, but he's not sure if it's because of the weird beings or if they're still harvesting those plants, as CJNG is trying to take over.
During the total solar eclipse over Mexico City, dubbed the Eclipse of the Millennium, hundreds of thousands to millions of people looked skyward in awe. Amid this spectacle, many reported seeing something far stranger than the usual eclipse phenomenon: a metallic, disc-shaped object hovering near the eclipsed sun for around 30 minutes. The object appeared reflective, rotated slowly, and was captured on video from multiple vantage points across the city. Journalist Jamie Maussan aired Aragon's footage on the popular TV news magazine 60 Minutos, triggering a wave of viewer responses. Maussan later claimed to have received thousands of calls, with at least 17 other independent videographers submitting recordings showing the same object from different locations. At least 7 of those tapes depicted nearly identical objects. Reportedly, up to 40,000 individuals reported sightings, making it possibly the largest mass UFO event ever documented. Eyewitness accounts emerging online describe groups seeing one or multiple metallic spheres or discs, usually silent and gently pulsating against the darkened sky. Multiple users recalled the eerie quiet as thousands watched in silence during totality.
When I was 6 years old, my dad told me about his ghost demon encounters growing up in Ecatec, Jalisco. One evening when he was 5 years old, he was going home from the local church. While he walked to his house, he saw a dark gray donkey with a pitch-black mane. But the strangest thing about it was its bright, glowing red eyes. The donkey was slowly walking up to him. My dad was so frightened that he was shivering intensely and he couldn't move. The donkey's snout was close to his face and it spoke in a deep, demonic voice. "Foolish boy, you will soon witness real horror, pain, and despair within your life. You cannot escape the grasp of the darkness." My father shut his eyes tight, but as soon as he opened them, the donkey suddenly disappeared. My father said it was the most frightening experience he had ever had.